G'day, welcome back to Following the Chosen as we follow the Promised Land. Laura Bennett from Hope Afternoons. We are up to episode 6, the finale, and you may be totally surprised to discover that I really like this episode, and one of the reasons is because the big finale to the big finale is worshipping God, and I'm kind of down with that.
Okay, but musicals you don't normally like, but
I like musicals.
Of the Promised Land,
I like the inclusion of musicals on this,
Okay.
including some references to boy bands and that kind of thing. I totally appreciate it. But just getting to the end of the episode, which makes sense that this is the unveiling of the tabernacle, the dwelling place of God on earth, that the Promised Land did a really good job, I thought, of reminding us of God and worshiping God and glorifying God, which throughout the season hasn't necessarily been the case. I'm not trying to have a go, just pointing out that as they're focused on the human leadership and quote unquote workplace situations of leading God's people through the desert for 40 years, there's been a lot more focus at times on the human element, with God more in the backdrop. But I like that God came to the fore in the final couple of minutes.
Yeah.
But I'm fast forwarding right to the end.
You are, but we can fast forward because I think we may touch on other parts as this conversation continues. But if we fast forward to that concept for just a moment, I think too, this is the first bit where it does ground the entire series in this, hold on a minute, when you experience God's presence, there is a response. There can be nothing other than some kind of response. And in the way the Promised Land has shown the experience of the people, this is the first time that as a collective, they're all confronted with the presence of God. Whereas up until this point, it's been Moses up on the mountain and it's his face that's glowed in, having seen God's face and all of that kind of stuff. Whereas now it's like all the people collectively are like, oh my goodness. And it's like everything they've done up to this point is kind of, as I said before, sort of grounded in this moment where, wow, we're now sort of face to face with something that they hadn't really experienced to the same degree up until that point.
Yeah, and I liked how this was depicted in a bunch of different ways, but two ways that stand out to me is I'm still really enjoying the storyline with Bezalel, who, like, in some ways is a bit of a minor player throughout Exodus, apart from when you read Exodus and you see him named by God as one of the two artisans that are going to construct the tabernacle. That's basically what you get about Bezalel in Scripture. But in the Promised Land, this incredible storyline of his involvement in the making of the golden calf and how that's caused him to basically feel loads of guilt in front of God. But then you get to, as he's trying to perfectly create the tabernacle, which you totally understand that if you're serving God and this is God's dwelling place, you want to get it right. But Moses does a great job in this episode of reminding you can't be perfect. You're not God. You're never going to get it 100%. You've got to do the best you can in obedience to God. That's what God's looking for.
I just want him to be pleased with my work.
He will be. Not because it's perfect, but because you obeyed him and gave it your best. That's all he wants.
And then Bezalel, right towards the end, seems to realize that. And there's like a moment of almost accepting love and forgiveness from God as God comes to dwell in this place that Bezalel's helped to construct. I really like that. And I also really like the switch out of the song that Miriam wrote that, what was it initially? Oh, Unworthy.
Unworthy,
It went from Unworthy, which again, like you can understand as a human who knows they're unworthy in front of God. I think that's the right word. I enjoyed that early on of like, oh yeah, I get why you'd want to write a song called Unworthy. But then how as soon as God is there, you realize, sure, I'm unworthy, but also like how amazing is God and how amazing is it that we get to worship God? And so the switch out of the songs, I really enjoyed.
It becomes really celebratory. And there's a few things in that I was sort of struck by as well with this whole perfectionism thread. Because even in life in general, when you're wanting to do something well, the idea of getting it perfect can distract from the fact that you just need to get it done. Like it's getting it done. I think the way Moses expressed it to Bezalel was God doesn't want perfection. He wants obedience.
Not because it's perfect, but because you obeyed him and gave it your best. That's all he wants.
And it's more the heart attitude than the actual thing you're presenting, whatever it might be in the context of life. And also remembering they're going to deconstruct this thing and take it with them and then have to reconstruct. So it's something that needs to be movable, and there's got to be a level of physical and sort of metaphorical flexibility, even though everybody's trying to like follow the instructions to the note because the detail is important. But then also that like the beauty of like Miriam's thing around it did give me a bit of a laugh, because God's instruction was to build the tabernacle, and then classic, of course, they're like, let's do an opening production, like let's have singing, let's have this, let's have that. And I kind of like that it sort of spoke to that nature that it's like we're given a thing and then we want to make it more and bigger and extra.
Even though it was already big and extra and weighing on those who are doing it. But you're right, like, let's add more to it.
Like, let's make it a musical. Like that sort of thing where it's like, that goes beyond what the original instruction was, but they wanted some kind of fanfare, which of course you can understand, like that would be part of it. But I also thought this was actually just funny. We've spoken before, I think it was in episode 1 or 2, about how we're watching this for free on YouTube, which is brilliant how they've made it accessible that way. But you do have all the ads that pop up. For me, the timing of the ads was hilarious, because as Aaron is doing the big like offering to Jesus and it goes, whoa, like
offering to God?
Offering to God, sorry, yes, offering to God. An ad for pizza came up right as this like fireplace goes and it's like offering to God, and then it was like, get your pizza.
Wow,
like,
how did YouTube know?
How did they know that there was an offering that was needed and it would be pizza? Like,
wow,
out
of all the things that the YouTube algorithm could pick up on, it picked up on fire and home delivery, not
pizza.
The celebration and worship of God.
Wow, but the experience of watching the show even gave me a laugh because of that, how perfectly timed the humor of my ad was with this really deep moment in the show.
I enjoyed some of the laughs early on in the audition process of getting the big musical opening production number done. Was it Korah or was it another boy band that did "I Will Be There For You"?
Yeah, well, Chasisi kind of was like, hey, I kind of got this.
Awesome. But yeah, whole like "Ain't We Got Fun" Sons of Korah number was excellent. Like, how delightful.
I knew I had trained my men well, but to see them with my own eyes...
left Egypt just to see if we still got far.
And we haven't even touched on, I mean, I love the music of all of that. It was quite fun. They were a highlight of this episode. But that just reminded me of the Pharoh, let my people go moment. Oh. And I was ready for the, ooh, baby, da-da-da-da-da. Like, if anyone else in Sunday school ever did that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But that was not in
Please
this episode.
Please do that again. I didn't do that in Sunday school.
That was the moment. I'll show you off camera.
If you'd like to drop in the comments how you would love now in every future episode for Laura to do that, please let us know, because I, for one, would. I hadn't seen that in Sunday school. Clearly, my education was lacking. So we also skated over I think for me, it was the best opening sequence of the Promised Land so far, with this reenactment of Moses and Aaron preparing themselves to take on Pharaoh.
Pharoh, I'm speaking to you. I am talking. Please look at me. You're not being very helpful, Pharoh.
I really don't think this is how Pharoh will behave.
And they were doing, like in a workplace, they were doing role play around how we would do this. And Moses playing Pharaoh up against Aaron was great.
Being in a good mood, in a bad mood.
Like a petulant child. Plague boy. Yeah. It was great.
Which does play into, though, what ends up being one of the focuses of this episode about the teasing that Moses directs toward Aaron, and how they have to have this conversation to forgive, and how Moses, again, coming back to his need to sort out the pride issue and stuff, Zipporah calls him on it and is like, hey, you need to go and have a chat with your brother. You need to sort of ask for forgiveness, but also let him know you've forgiven him for everything. And I love how Moses says, he's like, yeah, I do want to just get it done, but tomorrow. Like, I'll deal with it quickly tomorrow.
Yeah, today...
Momo! You and I both know you should just say sorry and get it over with.
And it's so classic when you know you've got to go speak to somebody about something important. Potentially you approach it in a way of, hey, we're good, right? Like, that's all good. But you don't actually have the conversation you're intending to have because you're not ready to be fully vulnerable yet. And that interplay was really cool.
In our last conversation about Promised Land episode 5, I was describing that one. You should go back to it if you haven't heard the conversation, be part of it. I made the claim that was the most Australian episode because of the teasing that was going on. What did you say? The being mean to each other. But Australians, we can be mean to each other, but we say it's all in love. That resonated with me in the last episode. And yeah, this is a really good follow-on in episode 6. And I'm sure this isn't just exclusive to Australia, but I've seen this, at least in myself, and other people I've worked with, let alone other relationships in life. Moses not just trying to delay when you're going to do the apology, but also how bad an apology can be and how you're not actually apologizing, and you even know that you're not actually apologizing, but at the end of it you tell yourself, no, I just did. But the other person, I thought some of Aaron's reactions to this afterwards were like, hang on, especially when Zipporah told him, Moses came and told me, you're all sweet. And you're like, wait a minute.
And he's like, we're in different conversations.
Apparently, Moses and I had two different conversations. There's what he told Zipporah happened and what actually happened.
That did not happen at all.
He was very gracious.
That was a nice thread through this episode, which is really all about the tabernacle being unveiled. But it was nice to kind of tie that up, what's been going on between Aaron and Moses as well, without distracting or taking over from the big finale, which is Tabernacle is here.
Yeah, but there is also something that in the lives that everybody would have been living in the lead up to this big Tabernacle reveal, there are some of, again, those really human things. Because, of course, you think about it, if Aaron was, given the opportunity to lead and builds the calf, has everybody directing worship in the wrong direction, and as Moses says, you just basically made everyone pagans, kind of took them into that route, there would be some kind of conversation that would have to be had about that, or you would have to forgive that whole thing because of the way that it affected the people and affected everything.
There'd be a big sin talk going on.
It's very real, but somewhere in the episode, I can't remember how they address it exactly, but there is that conversation of it's not just about what Aaron did, but it's also about how that is then responded to. And so like how Moses treats him becomes part of the picture too. And what's kind of, if someone wrongs you on a personal level or on a bigger, grander scale, it's not just about that thing, but actually how we respond to it can either add to the problem or help bring some kind of solution to it.
And I liked how the Promised Land in 6 episodes, which isn't very long, and each episode, 25 to 30 minutes. Like, we're not talking about a lot of TV here to cover a lot of ground, even though the people of God don't cover much ground because they're basically just stuck in the wilderness. But I liked how it ended on this note that even with all of these backdrops of human sin and humans trying to work out then how they not just forgive each other, but can I be forgiven by God, and can we change, and can we live following God's ways and all that kind of stuff. Really enjoyed it, finishing on the note of the singing of, I think it's a psalm, or maybe it is from Miriam's song. I should have gone back and had a look. If you know, please let us know in the comments. I think it's in Exodus or Deuteronomy, Miriam's song. Maybe this was quoting from it, the final song that they were singing. But I loved that they end on this note of beholding the beauty of the Lord and wanting to dwell in the Lord's house forever, in spite of all the stuff that's happened. Golden calf. In spite of all of that kind of stuff, they still, and like you said earlier, it's a good representation in the Promised Land of people being so astounded by the presence of God that they can't do anything but worship God.
Yes, and that's all very deep and very important, and I love that. And then I also love that it finishes as well with a moment in total contrast to that, where Moses and Zipporah still can't find their kids.
Oh, look, the boys.
The boys? Go, 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 go! Wait, where did they go? Oh, we lost them.
Because it's kind
I'm glad you brought that up.
Because part of like Zipporah's condition to Moses when he's talking about the need to forgive Aaron was that he wanted to see the sons, and Zipporah's like, you can see your sons once you've, dealt with Aaron. And then at the end of the episode, they have the big like presence of God, all of that stuff. And then where are our kids? And they can never find them. And I just love that little callback to the previous kind of humor that they had with that.
Okay, so wrapping up on the first season, hopefully, of the Promised Land, hopefully it kicks on. Thoughts, feelings?
It has been an absolutely surprising series to me. So
Surprising
because I had no idea what to expect from what this show was going to bring, other than initial thoughts were they're building upon what the Chosen has been able to do. So the Chosen opens this great door to look at biblical content from another kind of more human lens. And the Chosen has done that in this really deep, really nuanced human kind of way, but deals in a much more, like you'd put it more toward the sort of drama genre. Whereas obviously with the Promised Land, it's totally sitcom, and it's doing that sort of stuff in a way that I don't think the Promised Land wouldn't be able to do what it's done without the Chosen having set up something that relaxes people a little bit to the idea of approaching scripture in this kind of non-strict sort of way. But then it's been brilliant. It's exceeded my expectations in terms of how well it's done. But also I really was not expecting the depth of leadership wisdom that the show has brought. Like that has honestly been something that's made, I've really pulled things from it from a personal perspective of going, that's actually really useful advice. We could do with more of that, whatever it might be. And then also too, to look at the Old Testament a little bit more deeply and refresh my memory of stuff in scripture that I just totally forgot. Like I've said in one of the earlier episodes, I think modern day Christianity, the way we live out our faith day to day, isn't so like stuck in Old Testament stuff. It's much more in the Gospels and Jesus and so forth, because that is like Jesus kind of changed stuff, obviously. So that is the bit that more immediately impacts how we would live our lives right now. But the context and the history of the Old Testament matters so much to understanding our faith in a way that it's important we don't forget, even though Jesus set aside so much of what was Old Testament law.
It's so important though also to remember that so much of what Jesus did and said informed by all that came before him, including, and the Promised Land is smart about like zeroing in on one of the most famous pivotal moments in all of history. God's people not just being rescued from Egypt, but the handing down the 10 Commandments and the law, and how God told his people how he wants them to live in relationship with him. But it's also about the heart behind it and the love and close relationship and connection. It's not just a rule book. I would only add to what you said that you can say so many things about the Promised Land that you can also say about the Chosen, as you acknowledged, but helpfully with the show, it's very easy to forget as it goes along, including all the nods you want to keep making to The Office as well. Like it clearly owes so much to both of those shows and many others. But I also enjoyed how very quickly you could put all of that to one side.
Yeah.
And as much as it was focusing quite smartly on some of the human elements, particularly around leadership and group dynamics. As I think I've said now 1.2 million times in this episode about this final episode, I'm loving how God and glorifying God and being in a relationship with God has been the backbone of the show. And then in this one, boom, it just comes to the fore. And I think that's exquisitely represented in Jesus and our relationship with him. But this is a top reminder that before Jesus, God and people related and worshipped and praised God. And to end on that note for the Promised Land Season 1 just gets my vote. What gets your vote about the Promised Land? Keep sharing it with us wherever you are enjoying following The Chosen, which I'm sure you are, via whatever podcast channel and YouTube and all the places, Laura Bennett, that I'm not going to list off because you know and everybody knows. You know where you are. I think you do. You do. And we really appreciate you sharing the show so more people can get involved with the conversation. You strongly recommend Laura Bennett's 5 stars, I believe, is the
5
star
stars.
rating.
Every episode, 5 stars of Following the Chosen, of course. You can have mixed opinions about the star rating for the Promised Land.
And keep sharing them with us. That would be great. We will be back for more Following the Chosen. Thank you so much for joining us on this special journey through the Promised Land. We'll see you next time.